Thank you for coming on to the program. Now, this may have ruffled a few feathers in the financial advice community. What does it say now that unregistered or people not holding an AFSL can tell people how and when they can withdraw their super?
Yeah, you could expect a little bit of tension within the industry for that announcement. It certainly has met with mixed reviews from the advice community, at least. I think our own straw polling shows that only about 35% of advisors are supportive of this measure. I think the thing in relation to the tax agents, it's essentially creating an uneven playing field. Tax agents who don't need to meet the Australian Financial Service licence conditions and also don't have the same obligations that advisors are currently dealing with around educational levels and some of the other business controls on delivering advice. So it's a concern amongst the community. I think the concern too is in relation to the way in which the advice then is delivered to the consumer who's coming to the tax agent for help.
Well,
there are certain requirements to that. Yeah.
Sorry, speaking to that educational gap that exists, and the government is basically putting in any steps it can to give as much advice to as many people as soon as possible. And granted, that means that not every piece of policy is perfect in every context. But how else can we bridge this educational gap right now to let people know whether taking out their super is right for them?
Yeah, look, I can't fault the government's intent. I think there is definitely a supply problem with a lack of professionals to help consumers, with something like 800 or 900,000 consumers already registering an expression of interest to withdraw the superannuation early. And it's not even official until Monday, next Monday. We're going to see 1 to 1.5 million people, I suspect, seeking help. So I think the government intent is good. You know, if it means that a consumer is advised, informed in some way that allows them to make a better decision, I think that's a good thing.
Do you expect this to become more permanent, though? I mean, we all remember, obviously, the CPA's foray into financial planning in 2017. I guess does this signify something that may become more permanent going forward?
Oh, Ingrid, I think there's a few things about it that are encouraging. I might start with the thing that we talked about. I'm not sure that it's going to become permanent that tax agents and accountants can deliver advice without a license. I just don't think that's going to be long term. I think some of the things are relaxing around delivering that advice. There's a lot of paperwork involved in delivering a financial plan, even a small one. And they're relaxing the requirements for level of documentation and also how quickly that documentation has to be provided to the client. So I think that's a good thing. That may become permanent. We had
Mark Carnegie on the program earlier. He basically made a great analogy. He was explaining anyone who took out their super early is effectively shorting the compound rate of the equity market and accepting basically a zero compound bond for an indefinite number of years. And so for those people who lack that full understanding of just what that opportunity cost might be, what sort of very broad kind of advice can you speak to in regards to this potential decision-making process?
You're right. Lots of people have quoted the numbers. If you were 30 years old, you took out the $20,000 and you got a 6 or 7% compounding return on that over 35 years of your working life, you will be foregoing $500,000 in retirement. So these are substantial sums. That's one of the tests that someone providing advice to a consumer who's asking the question, should I take out $20,000? They need to model and indicate to the consumer what impact that will have in retirement. It's part of the relief requirements that ASIC have come forward with, that tax agents, advisors, people working for the super funds have to provide that information so that the consumer is making an informed decision now. If I take this money out because I believe I need it, it's going to have this kind of impact in my retirement.
What do you think this means for the longer term impact on the industry? I mean, it's somewhat a double-edged sword, but what's your take on the longer term impact?
Well, I see generally positive from this. I think it's encouraging that the government's pushing consumers towards the advice industry. I mean, how can you fault that? That's a great thing. You know, we're trying to grow the penetration of advice in this country. It's at a very low level, 15%, and we know that advice makes a difference. So I think that's a good thing. The relaxation of some of the overly officious and cost burdens that the industry is currently carrying based on a lot of the zealous regulatory reform, I think, that we've seen. If that can be relaxed to some extent, that's tremendous. And just opening up that opportunity for people to be helped. I think it's also going to potentially lead to more accountants coming into the industry, which I think is a good thing as well. There are lots of accountants who are currently registered, have an advice license, so that's a good thing. I hope more of those people come in. It's a big workforce, 50, 60,000 accountants, 22,000 financial advisors, and shrinking at a very fast rate. So we do need more professionals in the industry helping more consumers.